Welcome to Redirect, Immigration Law and Perspectives, a weekly dive into the world of immigration law and its human consequences. I'm your host, Stephen Robbins, joined shortly by co-host and fellow immigration attorney Matthew Archambault. This week, we're talking about some stuff that's going on. We're back from a little vacay, and so, lots going on. I'm just, no spoilers this week. You're just going to have to listen to the show. If you like this show, guess what you can do? You can subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify, all the places. Leave a review, say something nice. What else can you do? Well, you can become a patron at patreon.com/redirect. Send us money and encourage us to keep doing this. And we really appreciate all of the support and all the nice words you've been sending us. It means a lot. Enjoy this week's conversation with Matthew. Everything is awesome. Do you know the Lego movie? Are you familiar?
Yeah, of course.
Are your children fans of the Lego movie?
I'm probably a bigger fan.
You are?
Yeah, I liked it.
All right, let me just say this.
It was entertaining. I was entertained when I watched it.
Hot take.
Yeah.
I really actually like the Lego movies. I think they're funny and as subversive as you're going to get in terms of like popular culture these days. But let me say this. Hot take. The kid is the bad guy.
In which way?
It's not the dad. The dad has a hobby. The dad likes his hobby. He likes his hobby a certain way. And the kid comes in and wrecks his stuff.
Well, kids are ass. You haven't figured that out yet?
Exactly. But they try and make the dad look like he's the bad guy, and he's not. He has a long day at work. He wants to come home, enjoy his hobby, and he comes home and his kid has completely wrecked everything. And
did Sophia mess up your Legos? Is this where this is coming from?
This is not coming from a personal place. I'm just saying when you've had a long day and you want to come home and enjoy your Legos and you've got them set up how you want them and your kid comes and wrecks it, I think it's really unfair to portray the parent as the bad guy in this particular scenario.
Did Sophia lose your Luke Skywalker action figure again?
It's just that they're not toys, okay?
Yeah.
Moving on.
I'm sorry to hear that. Other than that, she's a good kid, right?
Look, I don't know why you keep wanting to make this personal to me. This is a random observation that has nothing to do with my own personal life.
My apologies. All of this has been theater, by the way.
Now look.
And scene.
Now look. This show can be a little negative. It can be a little...
People have said that. I don't see it, though.
I don't see it either. And I like to get my little dosage of morning positivity from USCIS Acting Director Ken Cuccinelli himself.
Hold on. It's Ken Cuccinelli.
Recently photographed with Diamond and Silk, by the way.
Diamond and Silk.
You know what? I just thought of like the perfect right-wing grift. Okay.
Diamond and Silk?
No, it's even better than that. So you and I doing a Diamond and Silk sort of like thing, but in blackface. But when
that could never go wrong.
When it's discovered that we're not actually black, that it's blackface, then we get to feign outrage that you can't even do blackface anymore.
Yeah.
So then we really can hit all our bases by, just, I don't know.
Let's talk that over
off the air.
Yeah. We might have some kinks to work out of that one.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, moving on. Acting Director Ken Cuccinelli, he says today, now this is in light of the news that we've dropped our refugee admissions to, I think, historic lows.
I think 3. We're going to allow 3 in next year.
It's down to 3 people.
And they have to be from Scandinavia.
They have to be Scandinavia, and they have to be total 10s.
Oh, yeah.
17 to 19 years old, and total 10s. But Ken Cuccinelli says, in light of this news, now some people might be distressed by that, right? Like, refugees are people who come from towns that aren't even on the map anymore, right? Places that have been totally destroyed. They've lost their families, their homes, their possessions. They've suffered irreparable psychological trauma, and they're just looking for an opportunity
to harm the United States.
Opportunities that we can readily provide and dropping the number of refugee admissions to the lowest numbers ever, that might be distressing to some people. But don't fear, Matthew.
Oh, no, I mean, I wasn't going to fear because you preface this by saying Kenneth Ken Cuccinelli had something to say. He calms me.
Ken says, this is on Twitter, which is how we communicate now, America is the most generous nation in the world and takes in more refugees and asylees combined than any country in the world. We are number one. FYI, there's a difference, B/N. I think that means between. Refugees and asylees. Refugees are not located here in America, while people seeking asylum are located here. Both have the same standard, i.e. they have to show they are persecuted for religious, political, or other reasons, or threatened with persecution. Now, some people might think that reducing those numbers to historic lows is not generous, but now we know that, in fact, we are number one in generosity.
Sounds like someone just read a fact sheet.
We are number one in generosity.
Do you know that refugees and asylees have the same legal standard?
Yeah. Matthew, how does it feel to be number one in generosity?
Well, it feels pretty damn good.
Feels good.
I mean, because like being number two, I mean, it's okay, but it's not as good as being number one.
Yeah, I think in general, you're shooting for top 5. You want top 5. Top 10 you could settle for, but definitely top
like
5.
The Trailblazers, top 10. Always.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't need to go there. But, to be number one, it feels really good. And, some people, I think, will be especially heartened because not just have we reduced those numbers, but like we've put kids in cages and some of that stuff that doesn't on its face seem super generous-y. But here we are sitting atop of the board at number one, and it feels good.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think he makes a lot of points.
He makes a lot of points.
Yeah. We can discuss later off the air, and you can discuss amongst yourselves, and we encourage our listeners to have discussions about things.
Yeah.
And you can discuss whether those points were good points or bad points.
Right.
But we have to admit they were points he made.
Now, we've had a couple of weeks off.
I think it's been about 10.
I was on vacation. It feels like 10. It feels like 10 weeks.
Did you go to Jellystone Park?
No, I was in Ukraine, actually.
Really? Wait, what were you doing in Ukraine?
Well, first of all, people keep saying Vladimir Zelensky. It's Volodymyr.
Okay.
And I think that's the better pronunciation. Volodymyr. It's a cool name, cool guy. We were just hanging out. I was trying to get a job with an oil and gas company, and it turns out my dad is not at all important to anyone. So,
really? How about your mom?
No. None of my family is important.
So when you and Rudy were there,
I call him Rude.
Tell us about his dietary preferences in the Ukraine, Rudy Giuliani. Where did you guys hang? Because I imagine he would be kind of like, he would like steak and some scotch.
Yeah.
And he probably has like food all in his teeth all the time. Is that true?
Well, Rudy Giuliani. He's really into McDonald's, basically. Lots of burgers.
So in Ukraine, were they discussing this? I mean, I don't know if it had kind of blown up by the time when you were there.
This story was sort of starting to break on our way back. I think maybe the last day, but it's interesting. I guess I'll just say this very briefly. It's a young country. People keep talking about its corruption, which is like a very distilled, crystallized corruption in its purest form. But it is a young country. I mean, they're less than 30 years old, and they're sort of trying to find their way. And I think people are still pretty optimistic about this new president. And at the same time, they're fighting off literal invasion. And what's happened in their country is really sad. They've lost, I think it's 15 to 16,000 people in this ongoing conflict. And so it is a little weird to come back, when you're there and those realities are sort of very present, and to come back and see a lot of people treating it like a joke place, like one podcaster I listened to called it a stupid made up country. And that was weird.
Who was that?
Well, I'm not going to.
That's not nice.
It's not nice. It's not PC either.
Is this a podcaster that you admire?
Well, I like the show sometimes. It depends. In the right doses, I would say. Kind of like the show. But anyways, It was interesting. We did go to the Yanukovych residence. Yanukovych was the former president who was run out of town in 20...
I thought that was a tennis star.
Well, there's probably a tennis star or a gymnast named Yanukovych too. So this guy, the presidential...
This guy,
let me tell you about this guy. The presidential salary in Ukraine is like $3 a month or something like that.
Sweet.
And
But to be fair, in Ukraine, you can get a pretty good apartment for that.
That's right. But he had developed very quickly this $2 billion residency on this huge property with a zoo and all kinds of crazy things. And so we went and toured that place. It's a good example of how the corruption is very real, and they're just straight up stealing, It's not like...
Is that going to become a Trump property sooner or later? Is that probably going to happen?
Well, I think, yeah, who knows? But anyways, that's where I was. I did want to follow up on our last episode, because in our last episode, we did a whole episode about how grateful I was that ICE called me back. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Was I skeptical in that episode?
Well, just to recap, in case anybody missed it, we had this case get reopened for a client who's deported, and we needed to bring him back for a hearing that was coming up. And I was having trouble finding the right person to talk to. And then I did, a super helpful ICE officer, and we arranged for the return of this client through the port of entry in Nogales. And it hadn't even occurred to me to be skeptical of this, or to be, it hadn't even occurred to me to call into question any of this. So I'm on vacation, and the day comes, and I get an email from this officer at the border saying, like, where's your client? And I had told ICE that they would be coming up on bus. And, the bus schedules, as you can imagine, it's not exactly Mussolini's Italy, right? So the arrival time was never given as an exact time. And so I call the client, and they say that they're 45 minutes away or something. But when the client gets there, they wait in line, and they get to the front, and Border Patrol doesn't know what they're talking about. And it turns out the ICE officer had left because he had waited a really long time. So now the client is stranded in this town, this border town.
Well, now he was going to a port of entry, right?
Right.
So presumably at this port of entry, there's an office.
Right. But in this case, this is my understanding, which is that ICE has jurisdiction over paroles in these types of cases. And the ICE officer was there to process the parole and to bring him into custody in the United States. So this particular ICE officer was sent down to this port of entry for this purpose, right? And he waited, and the client didn't show up, quote unquote, on time. So no big deal, I say to myself, we'll do it tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I call the original guy, the guy who got all the praise on the last show for being very helpful. And he said, you know what? I'm done with you and your client. They made my guys wait around all day long. They wasted all my time. And I'm not going to waste any more time with you. So if you want help, you've got to call ICE in Tacoma.
Which makes sense, because Tacoma is literally right next to he's coming from Mexico, right?
Right.
Okay, it doesn't make sense. I'm
so
sorry.
I say, well, I've already talked to those guys, and they're the reason I'm talking to you, because they didn't want to help me, and you seemed like you wanted to help me, and maybe you could be a little understanding of the situation. The client is now, stranded, and nope, he was done. So I'm afraid that your cynicism turned out to be correct.
Yeah, it almost always is. I mean, to be cynical in this field is usually the correct play.
It's almost necessary.
Because if you're not cynical, you're going to get hurt. If you're cynical, you're going to be surprised and happy, right? When things actually happen. So yeah, there it is.
So luckily, I will say, the story takes a good turn and then a bad turn. I'll make this quick. So I do call Tacoma, and we do kind of get it sorted out. They are really unsure whether or not they can help me, but they call the guy back for me and basically tell him, look, you need to do this. And so the guy had to spend the weekend in Mexico, but he was brought back. Now he was brought into custody. So, okay, so that problem was solved. Now let's talk about getting out of custody, because I was told that, well, ICE in Tacoma, they'll make the decision. They'll make the call on release or bond. So I emailed them ahead of time, and they say, okay, yeah, we'll look at it. And then he's sent to Tacoma. So now he's detained in Tacoma. And I follow up with this officer, and I call her cell phone because her cell phone was literally in the footer of her email as of a couple months ago. And she says, how did you get this number? And I said, well, it was on your email footer when you emailed me back in December. And then I continued talking about the case and explaining that he has no criminal history and he's got kids and there's really no reason to detain him. And she says, I don't see that I emailed you in December. So she just wanted to talk about how wrong it was for me to have called her government phone, which used to be public but is now apparently not. And they said that it'll take them time to look at the bond and make a decision. And now he's been detained almost 2 weeks, and they're still apparently looking at it. I don't know.
Where is he?
He's in the Northwest Detention Center. So we scheduled a bond hearing with the judge, but, ICE could also just let him out. They have that authority, or set bond themselves. And, they're just really busy. So it seems like maybe you should make that decision before you detain a person.
Yeah, but why? Why bother?
Detain first, ask questions later is the new motto. But anyhow, that's how that saga shook out. What's been going on with you?
Well, it's been fun. So we are doing this. Me, Bridget Cambria, and Amy Maldonado are doing a federal district court case up here. I think I had mentioned it before. But essentially, a father and a 17-year-old daughter from Guatemala came to the United States seeking asylum. We said, hey, that's awesome. We really want to hear what you have to say. Mm-hmm. You're just going to have to wait in Mexico.
Right.
Okay, for a little bit. And then you come back on a certain date, and the judge will hear what you have to say. And then we're going to send you back to Mexico. And then you're going to come back and go back and come back and go back until we can hear your case.
The reason we know that this program is good is because it's called the Migrant Protection Protocol.
Yeah, they're protecting migrants. There's a protocol that they have.
Is this the most Orwellian name you could possibly imagine?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. So what happened shortly, dad and daughter went to Mexico, and they were walking around a little town there on the border, and someone said, hey, can we help you? We see that looks like you're waiting, you have your immigration court in the United States. So they knew exactly what they were doing. And they go, yeah, hey, we can help you. And they brought them to a house, like as a shelter. It turned out that they were kidnapped. So they were held for hostage in a small room for a while. I guess these kidnappers couldn't get anything out of them. So presumably they turned them over to other kidnappers. They were held there for a little while, and then they were able to escape.
You know how they have like different graded mortgages?
No, it's like selling your like bad loans.
Right. So it was like, anyways, that's probably a bad joke to make, but
well, I think it's probably what happened. And so they were able to escape. They came back over illegally because they missed their court date. They said, that's awesome. You guys are here. That's great. However, you have an order of removal. So we're going to send you back to Guatemala.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't just miss a court date, even if you're kidnapped.
Yeah. So people would logically think, okay, a father and daughter from Guatemala, they're at the border. We're going to send them to Guatemala. So you think it would be easy to get them from that border town down to Guatemala. But what they do is they send them to Berks in Pennsylvania, the family detention center.
Right.
And then they processed them there for their ultimate removal. So once they came up to Berks, Bridget Cambria got involved. And Bridget said, we're going to do a motion to reopen. And they're like, great, if your case gets reopened, we're going to send them back to Mexico. And then we filed this federal court case. And we just had a hearing on it on Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember. And it was up in Easton, Pennsylvania with a federal district court judge, a U.S. attorney. And this part of the case is really about jurisdiction, whether a district court has jurisdiction over this matter. For our non-lawyer friends, jurisdiction is just, is a court allowed to actually hear the case? And jurisdiction for these types of cases is very difficult. So we have kind of a difficult argument there, and hopefully we'll be okay. But
it's harder when the judge has to focus so much on understanding your accent too, I think.
Yeah, it does. But amazingly enough, up here, yeah.
It's totally normal.
Totally normal. Yeah. So before the court, we were kind of chit-chatting with the U.S. attorney. And you've probably done this before. This is before the judge walks in. You're talking to opposing counsel. For us, it's usually the Department of Homeland Security attorney. In this case, it's the U.S. attorney. And sometimes you're kind of talking a little bit about the case, or other times you're just talking about the weather, sporting events, anything, And it's usually fairly polite, don't you think?
Yeah. I'm never like, hey, you. I got your brief. It sucks.
Yeah. I'm never like that, except I was, as the kids today will say, I was somewhat triggered because the government's position in this Migrant Protection Protocol, what is happening is we are sending children to Mexico, back into Mexico with their parents, right? But we know that they're going to be homeless and they're vulnerable to attack, rape, kidnapping, assault, all these horrible things. We know these children are going to be homeless, but we don't care. I'm talking about the United States.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
And you might not know, but do you know if your clients in this case have family in the United States or someplace to go?
Yeah, they do.
They do.
They have a place to go. And the thing is, like, if they didn't have a place to go, we could arrange for shelters for them. There are organizations that would help them out.
Right.
So we have that taken care of. In Mexico, they don't have that. They do have some shelters, but men can't access those shelters. So that wouldn't have helped our client.
Right.
But there are so many stories. And this is one thing that the government attorney said. He goes, yeah, it seems like pretty bad. I'm seeing a lot of stories. He said something like it's unfortunate. and I said, no, I said, it's cruel. And I said, this whole system is a farce. And quite frankly, it's immoral. And then I said, the people who defend it are immoral. So he stopped talking to me, which was okay. Mm-hmm. Because we talked about this before, right? How we can have good people on the other side, right? And he seems like a nice enough guy, but he's older. So I'm thinking he's been a U.S. attorney for quite a while now. Mm-hmm. And if you've been a U.S. attorney for a little while, you usually don't have any problems getting a job, right? Mm-hmm. So he doesn't have to be there. And he's defending a program that I think is indefensible. And I'm not saying, he's saying that this reading of the statute should mean that it's an aggravated felony or a crime involving moral turpitude or some nebulous concept like that. He's actually actively working to send children into a place where they know it's extremely dangerous and the children are going to be homeless. Mm-hmm. So for me, that is somewhat indefensible.
Right.
And when we were talking to the judge, I did tell him, because in the government brief, they talk about there being a crisis on the border. And my view of it was, we agree that there's a crisis on the border, but we disagree on what that crisis is.
Right.
And the crisis on the border is immorality. It's the immorality of our position as a government, that we would be engaging in this. And all you need to do is go read about the Remain in Mexico program, as it's colloquially called. Go to Twitter, see Taylor Levy, Levy, Jody Goodwin, 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 like a good win. Jodi, Jodi. Follow them. They're on the front lines of this horrendous show that's on the border. And it is shocking that we're doing it. But fortunately, we may be able to start to include countries like El Salvador and Honduras as places that we send migrants. Did you read the new third country safe agreement with El Salvador?
No, but I want to, before we move on to that, just to talk.
Yeah, it's only going to get shittier, just so you know. If everyone's listening now and they think the situation's going to get better, it's getting shittier. So you can turn it off now if you want.
Yeah, it's hilarious that it's a crisis at the border, when this guy has family in the interior where he could go, and that process could take less than 24 hours to like verify and set up. I mean, what does that have to do with the border? It has nothing to do with the border, first of all. And I think what's really insidious about this program is the administration learned very quickly that they can do just about anything on immigration, but people do get a little testy when they see pictures of kids in cages. Like, that seems to be the line that they recognize. And so this scheme is really, I think,
it's brilliant.
It's brilliant because the cage is like the country of Mexico, and there are no photos or pictures, or, you know, some of these stories are coming out, but they're here and there, and it's, you know, it's not the same, and it's not inspiring any type of outrage, or it just doesn't have the same visceral reaction, in part because, you know, it takes time to explain, and it's, you know, whatever. People are busy.
I want to put a pin in that thought because I want to come back to that. The safe third party or third country agreement with El Salvador, one of the provisions says that the United States will adjudicate all unaccompanied minors' asylum claims. So if you're an unaccompanied minor and you come up here, we're going to hear your asylum claim here. However, we would have the right to grant that person asylum and send them to El Salvador. So
what?
Yeah,
I don't understand.
That's what. Oh no, I think you understand. You can't process it. That let's say a 15-year-old kid comes from who's unaccompanied. Let's say he's from Honduras. He comes here, or let's say he's from Mexico because maybe that's the only one that would qualify. Or if he's from Honduras, he comes by sea and he gets here. We adjudicate his asylum claim. We say, awesome, you get asylum from Honduras, but now we're going to send you to that safe third country of El Salvador. And we could send him there in accordance with this agreement.
Well, that's...
that would never actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
Or would it?
Yeah.
I mean, we can't say that would have happened, right?
Right. I think people really need to turn off the show. That's just general advice.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, they made a huge mistake in turning it on.
What are you doing with your life? What in your life led you to be listening to the words?
There are so many other podcasts.
So many. There's literally infinity podcasts. So first of all, turn this off and just go read for 5 minutes like what's going on in El Salvador. I had an El Salvador case recently, and as you know, you end up filing maybe 200 or 300 pages of country conditions evidence, and you want to review it and get to understand the situation. And it is horrible what's going on there. You know, with Mexico, there's some nuance, I think. I certainly wouldn't want to move to Mexico, and especially if I had no money to relocate. And there's all kinds of, I don't mean to downplay what's going on in Mexico, but there are some regions where there's less violence and they have a tourism industry that does exist. And it's possible to sort of carve out a life for yourself if you have the means to do so. I don't get the impression that like there's any nuance to what's going on in El Salvador. I mean, the country is run by gangs, essentially.
Well, I think the key thing is, though, it's in El Salvador. And your point about people being really upset about pictures of and videos of children in cages, And those videos that we saw of children or pictures of children being, torn apart from their families or their parents, and then those awkward and ugly kind of reunification videos that we saw, people understand that and they don't like it. My fear is that this Migrant Protection Protocol and all these other things that are happening that are going to be outside of our view because they're happening in other countries, if a Democrat wins, those are the types of things that may just be kept in place.
Right. And especially what they've done, it's kind of, in a way, it's brilliant because, well, in lots of ways, it's brilliant from their perspective. But now what you've got is 50,000 people in Mexico waiting to adjudicate their claims. And, if those people had been brought in the normal sort of flow, you wouldn't notice it. But if a Democrat comes in and says, we're now going to allow 50,000 super scary immigrants to just pour over the border, you and I would be fine with that because we understand that those are like not scary people. But that becomes politically an issue for, I think, a lot of Democrats, and they should do the right thing. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do the right thing, but what I'm saying is, yeah, it wouldn't be surprising to me to see them cower from the morally correct position based on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, they would have other priorities to address, and we're going to start working this way, and what Trump did was so horrible, and you can hear, and that's why I always say that we have to be vigilant that if Trump is not, or who's ever running for president in the Republican side when we get there, if a Democrat does win, that I would be happy. And I think I would allow myself to be happy on Tuesday night. And then on Wednesday, I think it would be time for us to begin to put pressure and saying, look, this is an issue that helped you win. And it will help whoever wins, if they win, in a way that I think people have been so turned off and disgusted by Trump's handling of kids in cages, family separation, that has motivated a lot of people. So even if it doesn't become issue number one in a campaign, I think it's still really important. And we let whoever is elected know, yeah, we're happy that you're there and we want to see the results. And we want to see you not only be better than Trump, we want to see you be moral and just.
Right.
Because being better than Trump is going to be easy, right?
I don't know. Yeah, the thing is, we're going to see, just like with Obama. With Obama, the big thing was like, we can't be too hard on him because that will only help the Republicans if he looks weak or if this, that, and the other. And so we've got to kind of shield him, and we got to allow him to just sort of do the politically expedient things.
Yeah, and he's got to be tough.
He's got to be tough.
Because what will happen is, right, the Republicans will see, oh, they are serious about this and they can be tough. And that will bring them to the table.
And so, if it's Bernie, there's going to be this sort of like, Bernie's going to get Medicare for all, but he's got to show the Republicans that he's serious about some other stuff. So we can't expend our political capital on doing the right thing for immigrants. There's going to be all these things, no matter, I think, who it is. And of course, we're assuming that there's going to be elections, which is hilarious.
I'm going to be too busy filling out the new affidavit of support forms to even notice.
I'm still in denial about that. I haven't looked at it. I've got my eyes totally closed to all that nonsense still.
Don't open them.
Eyes closed.
Yeah.
Just drive right off this cliff.
So anyways, tell me some positive stories or a positive story from your practice.
All right. Well, I have a really not positive story with a nice little vignette at the end. So You remember I had this big Ninth Circuit remand. I was really proud of myself. And the case gets kicked back to the immigration judge, and he denied the case again yesterday. This is for a client who's been detained for 3 years.
Why did he deny it the first time?
Well, he kind of threw everything at the wall to see what would stick. It's a mental health case, and there were arguments about, well, his mental illness is well controlled, and there's all kinds of things that were said that the Ninth Circuit said, well, we don't think that that's supported by the facts. So you need to do this over. So we had a couple experts testify, and he just said, well, I'm denying, but it's 5:00. I got to get home. And so I'll issue a written decision later. And I said, well, could you give us an idea of what your reasoning is? And he said, no.
I will deny it and I will figure out why later.
Yeah, it'll all be in the written decision. So that was...
Are there any discretionary things that he could deny on?
Well, we should probably not talk about this.
I'm saying that he'll probably deny on discretion, so you don't have review. That's a good trick.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, they're still withholding, but the government attorney I called the day before to see if he had a position on the case, and he's like, I haven't looked at it. And the file, I'm not joking you, is 9 inches thick. It's thousands of pages at this point. And he literally said he hadn't looked at it. He asked maybe 3 or 4 questions on cross, and then the judge conducted an exhaustive and aggressive cross-examination of the witnesses, sort of refusing to accept their answers.
Was the judge a little salty about the remand?
Well, it seems like it. Maybe he was clearly fishing for. He was asking about relocation in Mexico, and when the expert was like, "Yeah, not really an option," he asked it again, and when they sort of reiterated their point, he asked again, and so anyhow, I was already feeling sad. And then this happened, and I was pretty wrecked about it. So I'm driving home. It's about a 3-hour drive. I'm in the middle of the mountain, and my tire exploded. And it's like 7:00 at night. It's dark.
That's awesome.
I'm on the side of the road, cool. Yeah, in the mountains. So I call a tow truck, and I call the closest town, look up the tire stores. Nobody's open, but I call the first one just to see maybe they have, who knows, right? I need a new tire. And this Indian guy answers, like Indian, right?
From the country of India.
From the country of India, with a almost unintelligible accent. But I say, I think I could get there in about half an hour. Would you please stay open for me? I need to buy a single solitary tire, and you're going to have no other business, but just, and perfectly nice, without hesitation, says, keep coming. So the tow truck comes, and I'm like, hey, could you take me to Ellensburg? And sure. So we go, and it's this tire shop, and there's 3 or 4 Indian dudes. They're fairly recent immigrants, you can tell. I mean, they're not native English speakers, but a couple of them, I think, don't even speak English at all. And the one who does, it's a little bit of a struggle, but they changed the tire. They put duct tape on the bumper because the bumper's all f***ed up too.
Was it messed up because of the flat tire, or is it just messed up?
No, because the flat tire exploded and then ripped the bumper off. It was great.
Oh.
Anyways, these dudes really saved me. I got to be home and with my family, and it was just this little thing of remembering sort of why we do what we do, and that, people say things like, immigrants make America great, and it's a slogan or a t-shirt or whatever. And then you have a very distinct experience where it's like, oh yeah, that's actually true, right? Not that I ever doubted that, but it's not just a platitude. And those people, they didn't once hesitate. They didn't rip me off on the back end. I had this fear that they've really got me kind of by the balls, right? I don't have a choice. And is this going to end up being a $500 tire? Or I don't know. But no, they were perfectly good to me. They didn't expect anything extra, just good people. And I appreciate it. I mean, I was just in a bad place, and they saved me. So,
yeah, well, it's nice. And sorry about that court thing.
Well, I'll have to tell you about it off the air because
there's more to the story.
And I can't even begin to tell you how frustrating it is. But what about you?
Oh, well, I don't know if I mentioned it. I have a client who the judge granted asylum, and we were waiting to see because the trial attorney said he was going to appeal, but he never appealed. So now it's final. And we're still getting, cases approved, and that's nice. So I always want people to know that there are still positive things happening for now.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, just one more about that case. Is your client going to appeal or?
Yeah, the judge came back and he was like, well, I'm going to deny. You need to talk to your lawyer about appealing. And because for the non-lawyers, in a case like this, what they like to do is issue a short decision where everybody waives appeal. Nobody's going to appeal because then all they literally have to do is mark a box saying asylum denied. They don't even have to tell you why. They don't have to explain the reasoning or cite the case law. But if somebody's going to appeal, then that's, a lot of work, and they got to issue a decision and explain the rationale and back it up with the record. But no, the client wants to appeal, so here we go. You want to help me with a habeas, by the way? I've never done one, so I could use.
I would talk to Luis.
Okay.
Oh, did you see that news about friend of the show, Luis Cortez?
Yeah, we were going to record about that, and we just couldn't touch bases, but that's exciting.
I think he blew us off.
No.
But do you see who jumped in on the case?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Former Solicitor General of the United States for George Bush, Ted Olson. He's actually a conservative stalwart, but he sees something in the DACA case that has him interested, and he's going to come on and argue in the Supreme Court, and that's a pretty big deal.
I know, it's a big case. There's a lot of big lawyers working on it, and Luis had asked me before, like,
to work on a case.
I'd be willing to do the oral arguments, and I'm like, I'm super busy. I got some work permits to just stack up on my desk. But I'd talked to him before about it because, it's always this sort of like a horse trading and trying to decide who's going to do the oral arguments. And when he told me that this guy was on board, he's probably like a member of the same tennis club as like John Roberts. And I'm talking offhand. Yeah. I don't know anything, but I'm just saying like,
that's a general statement. That's true. You put that, make that into a loop.
Yeah, you have that guy do it if he's on board. So that's awesome.
Oh, one last thing. Also, my assistant, she's studying for the LSATs, really smart. And she was getting a little down about studying for the LSATs, which is a test that you would take to get into law school. And she said that she listened to a few of our episodes and it inspired her to continue studying and go to law school. So we are to blame.
Yeah, we've had a couple of people. The episode that you weren't on was the one they really liked.
That's usually the case.
We talked with Matt Cameron about, whether or not you should get into this and all that stuff. But it is good to hear that we have a sort of a niche show. I wouldn't expect it to take off globally. Clearly. Plus it sucks. Like it's niche and it's bad. Like that's the thing. It's like it's a real death nail combination. But we have had a lot of people reach out recently and just say, hey, this has been inspiring for me. And for one reason.
Let me say this. The show can be depressing and all that, but I actually love what I do. There's not a punchline here because most of my punchlines suck anyways. But I do love what I do, and I don't think I could see myself doing anything else. So for those of you who are thinking about getting into immigration law, I really can't argue against you. I really can't because I love what I do. So, right. And I love you, Stephen.
I love you too, buddy. Good talking to you. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
Later.
Lo mandé a buscar la chiva y me trajo el chivo macho, qué barbaridad. ¿Qué te parece, Cholito? ¿Qué te parece? ¿Qué te parece, Cholito? ¿Qué te parece? La espiga que maduró le dijo a la espiga verde que el que siembra en tierra ajena hasta la semilla pierde, Cholito. ¿Qué te parece, Cholito? ¿Qué te parece? ¿Qué te parece, Cholito? ¿Qué te parece? La guayabita madura, Cholo, le dice a la verde, verde, que el hombre cuando es celoso como yo se acuesta pero no duerme, Cholito. ¿Qué te parece, Cholito? ¿Qué te parece? ¿Qué te parece, Cholito? ¿Qué te parece? ¿Qué te parece, Cholito? Oye las cosas de este muchacho, yo lo mandé a buscar apareció borracho, qué barbaridad.
¿Qué te parece, Cholito? ¿Qué te parece? ¿Qué te parece, Cholito? ¿Qué te parece?
Las cosas de este muchacho, lo mandé a buscar la chiva y me trajo el chivo macho.
¿Qué te parece?